The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the August webinar titled Ready or Not, Retirement is Coming, courtesy of MassMutual Retirement Services. We certainly appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. This webinar is part of our ongoing monthly webinar series, and today we will discuss current retirement planning trends and ideas. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, please note that in order to ensure everyone has the ability to hear the information presented by our guest speaker, everyone will be on mute during the webinar. During the presentation, feel free to write in any questions you have using the Q&A link on the webinar menu. Then at the end of the presentation, we will take some time to go through these. With that said, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker from MassMutual, Dan Kolosowski, Retirement Specialist for MassMutual Financial Group. Dan has been with MassMutual since 2006 and holds his Series 6 and 63 licenses. Dan also obtained his MBA from the Eisenberg School of Management. Dan covers the West Coast for MassMutual Retirement Services and is responsible for 401k education through group sessions and one-on-ones. We're very excited to have Dan here to share some insight on planning for retirement. I would really like to thank Dan for taking the time to get on this call with us. And with that said, Dan, I'll now turn it over to you.
Great, thanks so much. Before I begin, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I really look forward to speaking with everybody on the phone, and thank you so much for joining today. So I'm Dan from MassMutual, cover the West Coast with retirement education. And here's a few of the topics that we'll cover today. I really hope you get a lot out of this meeting because obviously there's a lot of trends among pre-retirees, but we really want to look at whether in your peak earning years or whether you're in your 50s or you're even thinking about retirement or have even maybe recently retired, I really want to mention and talk about the different trends and strategies that I see. We really want to talk about planning, evaluating, making informed decisions. It's really never been more important, especially with the current and the recent market trends that we've seen really in the past 5 years. So hopefully you've been saving for retirement all along, saving that obligatory 10 to 15% like you hear everybody say. But really, even if you haven't and you haven't been that disciplined to save that 10 to 15%, which most of us maybe have not, it's really never too late to start saving. So again, I want to speak about current trends among pre-retirees and what I've seen, planning for ideas for anyone feeling maybe unprepared, and then finally, financial tips for those living on a fixed income. So those are going to be a few of the topics that we'll talk about today. If you have questions, I'd probably write it down, and then again, we're going to leave it for Q&A at the end, but I want to make sure I answer all your questions that you might have at the end. So really to start off, I'll start off with the good news. How about that? Living longer. Really good news. Like I said, we're living longer. According to recent data from the Centers for Disease Control, the average life expectancy is actually now over 78 years old, which is actually the first time in American history. So if you're healthy, have good genes, you can probably expect to even live longer. And according to the Society of Actuaries, a 65-year-old healthy man actually has a 50% chance of living to age 85 and a 25% chance of living to 92. For a healthy 65-year-old woman, there's a 50% chance she'll see 88 and a 25% chance of reaching 94. Doesn't stop there. If those two people are married, there's a 1 in 2 chance one of them will celebrate a 92nd birthday. So again, that's the good news. People are living a lot longer. Again, medical advances as well. But now I want to touch in the bad news. A longer lifespan obviously means a longer retirement, which could be a good or bad thing. But really many of the crutches we've relied on in previous years and for a number of decades, such as pensions, which actually companies are abandoning now for 401ks, Social Security, which is technically teetering on the brink, or even an inheritance, we can really no longer rely on those, and any additional sources of income as such should only be viewed as supplemental. So again, you really want to think about, will Social Security still be there? Is it going to be enough to live off of? It's really meant to cover about 40% of one's pre-retirement earnings, and the other 60% really comes from you. But again, it really depends on your lifestyle. So I want to cover that obviously later on at the presentation and talk about withdrawal strategies. But to continue on to the bad news, I always like to start it low and then I'll bring you up during the end of the meeting. But Bad health will also likely catch up with us. And one thing in regards to bad health is medical expenses, out of pocket specifically. Now, these expenses can be crippling. In fact, they can even derail a most well thought out retirement plan, and I've seen it happen before. Estimates from the Employee Benefit Research Institute show that actually men, while in retirement, need an estimated $124,000 to $211,000 just to cover health insurance premiums and out-of-pocket medical costs. Women, who typically live longer, need anywhere from $143,000 to $242,000. So these figures do not include the cost of nursing home or assisted living facilities, costs that are not covered by Medicare, which you qualify for at age 65, by the way. And unfortunately, about 70% of those over the age of 65 will end up living in a long-term care facility, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So just take note of those numbers there that you see for both the men and the women. Now, healthcare isn't the only cost that's rising. Just about everything else is, obviously, as well. I mean, you go to the grocery store, we see gas prices, education, if you have any kids in college or if you've been through it, you know that education is constantly rising, property taxes, home heating costs, really everything in between. But let's look at this example that I have on this slide of the price fluctuations of gasoline. Now, really, whoever imagined that we'd be paying almost $4 for a gallon of gas, but being on the West Coast, I'm pretty familiar with it. And right now, I believe I just filled up yesterday about $4.09 for regular and about $4.29, depending on where you are, for premium. So it's really important to save as much as you can, and keep in mind that what you have accumulated now may not buy the same amount in the future. So what am I getting at with that? Really talking about inflation. So for example, the current inflation rate is about 4%. And that's actually up from an average of just 2.2% in '99, 1.6 in 2002, 2004 had about 2.7, and actually 1.6% in 2010. So let's look at the bar chart. Obviously, today $1,000 can buy, well, $1,000 worth of goods and services today. But in 10 years, that same $1,000 will only be worth $676. In 20 years, $456, and then you can see the trend from there. But that's pretty much because prices keep going up. So something that cost $20, say in 1980, would cost around maybe $55 today. So you kind of get the gist of that. Unfortunately, though, as inflation, which is a big factor for retirees because it really erodes your assets, it trends higher. And you're continuing to get lower rates on your fixed income investments. So if you look right now at the average yield on a 6-month CD, and again, you could probably walk into any local bank that you have around the corner, but the average anyways for 6-month CD is just about 0.39%. I think the bank I just walked in the other day was about 1.1 for a 2-year, I believe. But at the average from moneyrates.com, they just released it about 0.39%. And that's actually down from more than 5% just back in 2007, about 5 years ago. So with all this information, it may sound like doom and gloom. I really don't want to bring it to doom and gloom, but really, let's face it, it can be scary, but here's where planning can really make all of the difference. So you've got to start thinking about what can you do today to make retirement a reality and how to get there. So first I want to talk about catch-up contributions because I know for individuals 50 or older, you can take advantage of this. So really what catch-up contributions are, a special type of retirement savings contribution that allows older Americans to make additional contributions to their 401k, 457, 430, et cetera, to their retirement company-sponsored retirement plan, or an individual retirement account or IRA, as you've seen out there. So it's a way to expand your retirement savings and ultimately, as it says, catch up. So let me talk about who's eligible. I just mentioned this. So workers age 50 or older or turning 50 during the calendar year can contribute an additional $5,500 to their company-sponsored retirement plan annually and an additional $1,000 to an IRA. So that brings the max pre-tax contributions to the 401k, $17,000 plus that $5,500, so $22,500. And the maximum tax deductible for an IRA contribution up to $6,000. So you can contribute up to $22,500 for your 401k plan, your company-sponsored retirement plan. And for your individual retirement account, your IRA, up to $6,000. So that limit has changed. I remember last year the under age 50 was $16,500. This year it's $17,000. So that's why you see $22,500. So if you're wondering if you've heard a different number before, they do constantly raise those limits, usually every year, usually every other year. It's usually just with kind of cost of living adjustment. So with catch-up contributions, how do you do that? Well, it's as easy as increasing your current deferral rate. So essentially what I see happen with most firms is if you reach that $17,000 for the year, you're then eligible, obviously, to take advantage of that catch-up contribution and go up to that additional $5,500. To make those changes, you can do that probably online or via phone, whatever is easier for you. But typically, you'll end up contacting your retirement plan administrator or even your HR benefits person for guidance. So they make it very easy for you to take advantage of it. And again, you'll take advantage of the catch-up contribution. If you're maxing out at that $17,000 for your 401k or your $5,000 for your IRA, then you'd be eligible to take advantage of that catch-up contribution of an additional $5,500 in your 401k or an additional $1,000 within your IRA. Now, one thing I want to talk about is an idea of remaining invested while in retirement. Being with Mass Mutual since '06, I've had many positions, and I was in a position where I set up installment payments for retirees, and I'd set them up kind of with their, not so much their final balance and allocation, but I'd set them up with a proper strategy. And one thing I noticed is that many people abandon equities altogether. But see, the fact is everyone's living longer, so the average, again, 65-year-old person is expected to live to 83. Half of all retirees will live longer than that. And what you're going to do is you're going to need money to grow and help fund your retirement. So what does that mean? It means sticking with equities longer, since stocks historically outperform other investments. So what I see most people do is actually switch all of their money into cash once they get to retirement. So when you kind of look at dealing with market volatility, and this is the reason why people switch to cash and fixed accounts because of the market volatility. Really, in volatile markets, even like this, what we're in right now, which, many are convinced that the buy and hold strategy, which produced double-digit returns in the 80s or 90s, is dead. All I can say is keep the faith. Really, the market has seen really dismal days, especially recently, days, weeks, even months. Not every year can be a winning year, but remember, when it comes to retirement, you must think long-term. So don't get flustered with the market ups and downs, the fear that's driven on the news. Even if you're in your 60s, keep in mind that the average you'll have invested in this is going to be about 20 years at least to average out the gains and losses. So when you look at an average 20 to 30-year market return, the stock market, kind of your S&P 500, over the last 20 or 30 years, it's still up over about 9%. So with your investment mix, that's not to say you should increase your exposure to equities. Obviously, you don't want to be too aggressive when you're about to retire. So really, in fact, when you get to retirement, obviously you'll be cutting back your portfolio to probably something more aggressive or more moderate, but something a little more conservative. So just to give you some ballpark allocation figures, I put them on the slide here. So a conservative portfolio really has about 50% bonds, about 20% equity, and about 30% cash, short-term type investments. And your balanced model is almost about a 50-50 split. So looking at about 50% bonds, 40% bonds, about 50% in equities, and 10% in about a short-term mix. But really what it comes down to, it's up to you and your comfortability level to select an asset allocation model that really fits your comfortability level and time horizon. And I use this in every meeting I do out here on the West Coast, is time horizon. The more time you have until retirement, the more risk you should be able to handle in your portfolio. So you should review and rebalance your investments periodically, as market fluctuations can change the allocation, making it more risky. Now, there are ways to rebalance the account and even set up automatic rebalancing. Most likely on your retirement account, you're able to set something like that up or manually do it. Typically, people do it whether it's every quarter, half year, or even on a yearly basis. They'll do a rebalance. And really what that means, to keep the portfolio in check, let's just say equities do really, really well for the next few years and you never rebalance. Well, that really small portion of equities in your portfolio may grow larger. So really, what does that mean? Your portfolio is becoming more aggressive. So by maintaining the investment mix, whether you're a balanced portfolio, whether you have that conservative portfolio, which most people are set up into, they'll normally rebalance it, so they always keep that conservative mix. Now, there's something that I've looked at when people set up installment payments is there's a withdrawal strategies, and some people will take out what they need. They'll take a look at fixed accounts. They'll take a look at bills and so forth. But there's a rule out there that you may have heard of, the 4% rule. And the studies, I've looked at it. T. Rowe Price released a study showing how much you could take out in the early years of your retirement. It really matters more than other factors, even your asset allocation, in determining the odds that you'll actually run out of money. All right, so in fact, even the most financially flush retirees can deplete their savings. They don't establish a sustainable withdrawal strategy and stick to it. So after all, the secret to making your retirement dollars last is not how much you've got, but how well you'll manage that cash flow, okay? So what's the appropriate withdrawal rate? Well, like I mentioned, that's going to vary for everybody. This is one example that I have is the 4% rule. So like I mentioned, you need to look at your age, life expectancy, I mentioned this before, living expenses, and obviously the rate of return on your investments. So like I said, the general rule of thumb is that 4% rule. So let me get down to this. So the way the 4% rule works is that you start by taking 4% out of your portfolio in the first year. This includes dividends, interest, withdrawals, and the next year you take out the same figure. You would have took out the first year plus inflation. So let's just say you have $500,000. So you have $500,000 in your account. In year one, you withdraw $20,000. In year two, you withdraw $20,800. In year three, $21,632, and so on, etc. So at this pace, this 4% pace at $500,000, your retirement savings should last 30 years and possibly much longer. Like I said, it really depends on your investment mix. So here in this graph, the example assumes an average of 6% annual rate of return. So even with a 4% withdrawal, your assets are still growing at 2%. And by adopting the 4% rule, there's a 90% chance or better of making it through at least 3 decades without running out of money or having to reduce your standard of living. So starting any higher than that, and the odds of running out of money actually increase dramatically, and you can see it on this slide right here. So example, if you start withdrawing at 5%, which is that green line on the screen, you'll likely run out in less than 30 years. And if you start withdrawing about 6%, you may reach about 24 years before running out, and with an 8% withdrawal, the money will actually only last about 16 years, just about 16 to 17 years. So like I said, that's not to say the 4% rule is foolproof. After all, the analysis performed in the mid-90s using nearly 8 decades of market history didn't take into account 2008, when many portfolios lost 30 or more % of their value. However, in '87, we saw the same thing with the Dow Jones lost about 30% as well. So these things do happen. But this analysis also assumes that you've got a diversified portfolio of equities and bonds. So I mentioned in the previous slide, if you have that conservative portfolio, you have a mix of equities and you have a mix of some bonds. Your odds of success are obviously going to greatly vary if you've invested primarily in a highly conservative portfolio of just bonds or CD-type instruments instead of all in equities. So with that said, it's important to reiterate that the 4% solution, it's just a guideline. If you find it doesn't give you enough income or you encounter a bear market and the value of your portfolio drops, you may have to cut back spending or decrease the withdrawal amount even more. So again, these are some things to think about, is a percentage-based withdrawal on a yearly basis to make sure you don't run out of that money. But like I said, really take into account what are your expenses on a monthly basis. That's it. It's easy as that. Cover your expenses, cover whatever costs you have, but make sure you plan accordingly or you don't overspend so you can live off this money for that 20 to 30 years time. Now another thing, idea number 4, working while in retirement and then employment opportunities for retirees. When I was working back in Massachusetts, which again is the home office of MassMutual, I used to actually work for Basketball Hall of Fame, and I used to do some finances for them and some event management. I actually worked with a lot of retirees. So I found out even before that many Americans are finding themselves in that situation that they never planned on being in. That's either still working or in need of a job. And the recent, check out a recent national survey. There's some you could search online through AARP, Merrill Lynch, and the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College. Shows that nearly 80% of pre-retirees plan to keep working in retirement. Half of those who are currently working plan to continue working well into their 70s and beyond. And then 17% say they'll never plan to retire. Obviously, I want to get you to retirement at some point, but if you do like working and enjoy it and it keeps you active, there's no reason to stop. But really, the reason why people are working longer, and what I've even seen working at the Basketball Hall of Fame, individuals working there, there's been many market swings. Obviously, there's less home equity to tap into. I mean, I know even some, especially out here in California, some of us owe more than our homes are even worth, and interest rates are nearly at zero, having too much debt, particularly since wages have barely kept up with rising prices. So the bottom line is obviously that we need money, and that's kind of the major reason for it. So in fact, more than 3 in 5 U.S. workers in their 50s and 60s plan on working past 65, 3 out of 5 people. And nearly 50% say it's because they need money. Other reasons, they want to keep their health benefits. It's obviously a major reason. They want to be productive. They want to avoid being bored, looking for a sense of identity or worth, and they need to stay connected, be mentally active, which is a big reason, looking for new challenges. And then here's another reason, delaying retirement. When you delay retirement, it actually can result in more retirement income later. So according to Boston College, they have a retirement research institute there. To delay your retirement for just 3 years beyond age 62, you can actually boost your retirement by more than 1/3 because you'd be saving for more, obviously for retirement longer. You'd be postponing those withdrawals. You'd be receiving more from Social Security, obviously, because you waited, and potentially any pension you may have in the past. Plus, you'd also qualify for Medicare, which would eliminate the need for buying costly private insurance. So a lot of people will work that extra years for those particular reasons. But when we look at the current career situation, a labor market that's really as tight as this one, we take a look, particularly for an age bracket of age 55, there's more than 2 million unemployed Americans over the age of 55, 2 million. Job search times are obviously longer, and the easiest option is to extend your career wherever you are by staying with your current employer. So make yourself indispensable, take on new projects, stay on top of the latest technology, keep your skills current, keep them up to date. Really, the idea is to make your age and years come across as an asset, not a liability. And that's a challenge in and of itself. But finding a new career and finding employment outside of your company or in an entirely new field poses a huge challenge because you have to prove yourself really all over again, and often at a significantly reduced salary. This is some looking inward, consulting, finding fulfillment, working for maybe nonprofits, which don't offer big benefits but can be extremely fulfilling, or turning hobbies or passions into a part or full-time gigs. These days, and one heading to a rocking chair or on the porch, everyone is staying active, even if it means taking classes at the local community college. I know I get things in the mail from the local community college out here. Many times the class is only $25, and sometimes they actually offer free classes. So I know a lot of people will go to the local community college to actually stay active. So obviously learning new skills, volunteering, etc., it can be very fulfilling. So there's a few things to think about. If you want to work later into retirement, whether it's at your current position, if you want a totally different job change, or do you want to start volunteering, working for a nonprofit? Like I mentioned, when I worked at Basketball Hall of Fame, it's a nonprofit, it's a museum. A lot of people just enjoyed the game. They enjoyed teaching kids about the game of basketball. It's just history. It's really a history lesson. So really think about what you want to do at that point. But then there's another idea. When we take a look at demographic surveys, they show that most retirees age in place. So really what that means is they continue to live in the same house, or at least the same community as when they retired. But downsizing or moving to a cheaper community can help your retirement assets live longer, especially where you live has strong impact on your expenses. You should really consider your options carefully. Now, relocating, the idea is to strike a balance between high quality of life and low cost of living. And it obviously can be a challenge for most retirees. Now, if you're considering relocating, you also want to go to areas that have good doctors, access to quality health care, low crime rates, obviously access to airports and maybe leisure activities, libraries, theaters, museums, golf, a lot of different things. You want to make sure wherever you're moving to obviously has some things to offer. So among the cities that are growing in popularity for today's retirees, and this is what I've seen, Charlottesville, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Durham, North Carolina. I have a lot of family in North Carolina. I know it's definitely a cheaper cost of living. Hanover, New Hampshire, Portland, Oregon, which I've been to Portland many times as well, beautiful place, St. Petersburg, Florida, Tucson, Arizona, which is another place I go to. I travel to Phoenix and Tucson quite a bit. Just from personal speaking, you can buy a house definitely much cheaper than you can in California. St. George, Utah, which I've been to as well, which is a very beautiful place. Utah in general is very nice. And Albuquerque, New Mexico, which again in high elevation, actually keeps you in pretty good shape up there. Now places like Panama, Mexico, Ecuador, Belize, Costa Rica, and many other Latin American countries are also seeing a greater number of retirees moving either full or part-time and attempt to make their money go further and still live comfortably. I'm not sure if anybody watches HGTV or House Hunters or anything like that, but I do see a lot of their shows actually going to Latin America, Belize and Costa Rica in particular. So keep in mind when you relocate, just think about different options. Look at different cities. Maybe you want to just stay close to family and you like where you are. It really depends. I've talked to a lot of people who stay where they are and they're loving life, and other people who relocate to maybe warmer weather just to get a change. So really up to you, but that's, again, another thing to think about. Now, tapping the bonds of your family, it's really the ultimate safety net. So you may loathe to do this, as you may feel you lose your independence, but really due to any number of reasons, a weak economy, high unemployment, housing mess, financial woes, this is something that I see also happening as well across the country, and the growth of multi-generational households actually has accelerated during the economic downturn. So in fact, the number of households comprising of multiple generations jumped to 7.1 million, or actually 6.1% of all households in 2010. And according to AARP, in 2000, there were 5 million households composed of multiple generations, which represented 4.8% of all households. So obviously that's a big jump. So among the financial benefits, probably won't have to pay for rent. There's no mortgage. You can help defray household expenses for your adult children by helping them out with their children, be close to your grandchildren. Now this is an arrangement that can work, can give you a new opportunity to connect with your family. So as long as you lay the rules out well in advance and everyone respects one another, and it's certainly a nice alternative to an elder care facility. So again, another option. You may not want to do this at all, but again, I've seen this happen with many, many individuals. It's another option to think about if you wanted to get closer to your family. Another thing I see happening is downsizing. So keeping the home that you lived in and worked in most of your life may no longer make sense, especially if your house is large, with lots of bedrooms for children who have since moved on. You may not need all that space. So downsizing and moving to maybe a condo, for example, in a community where you can enjoy retirement, not worry about all the big house problems, may make sense, particularly if you don't have sufficient assets to retire, or maybe you're at risk of outliving your savings. So the benefits with this, you'll save money, not only on your housing costs, taxes, so possibly look at the taxes state by state. You can actually go to retirementliving.com to check that out. You can also think about maintenance as well, and also things like utility bills. You may also be happier, so researchers at again, Boston College, a retirement research facility there, found older folks who had moved as part of a retirement plan were happier than those who stayed put. Seniors who made short distance moves, staying near family and friends, were the happiest of all. So while unloading possessions, it's never easy, especially if you've been accumulating stuff for years on end. Neither is selling. And in fact, in this market, it can take months, and in some markets, years to sell a home. So if this is something you're even mildly interested in, know that it could take a while. It's really one of the worst times to sell a home since the late 70s or early 80s. Great time to buy, though, but definitely a worse time to sell. So you want to think about this as well as potentially downsizing the house, which I know many people do. You may also want to think about reverse mortgages. So what else can you do if you're worried about outliving your savings? As I mentioned, it brings us to this reverse mortgage. This is a product that could be key to the financial security of many retirees, but reverse mortgages, heavily hyped they're heavily hyped these days. They have a bad rap, and they're complicated, expensive, and really ripe for abuse. But what it is, it's a special type of loan, government insured, for older Americans aged 62 and up who own their own home, not a small mortgage balance remaining. They're living in home and are looking to convert equity into cash, and they're called reverse mortgage because instead of making payments to a lender, lender's making payments to you. So how does this work? The lender loans you money based on a couple of things: value of your home, amount of equity you have in the home, your age at the time of application. The older you are, the more your home is worth. The lower the interest rate, the larger the loan amount. So money that comes either in a lump sum, in monthly installments, as a line of credit, or as a combination. Unlike a traditional home equity loan or a second mortgage, there are no income requirements, so technically you could have no income. There's no medical requirements either, and there's very few credit requirements. So people with less than perfect credit can generally qualify. Further, there's no repayment for as long as you live in the house. Repayment occurs when you move, sell, or pass on. So sounds too good to be true. Well, before you apply, some things to consider. There's obviously fees, origination fees, closing costs. There's paperwork, inheritance objectives. There's responsibilities. So obviously you got your property taxes, insurance. Also important to note, even if you take out a reverse mortgage, you still have some financial responsibilities. So while you may be out on the golf course, obviously enjoying retirement with this new tax-free money that does not affect your eligibility for Social Security, by the way, or Medicare, keep in mind that you're still responsible for the general upkeep, obviously, at the home, and you'll be responsible for paying any property taxes and insurance. Now, just for fun, here's some of the quotes that I saw in a recent article and some Facebook fans shared on a retirement plan on NPR's Facebook page. And you can read them here. My husband and I both retired last year. We trimmed the cable bill and are frequenting restaurants less often. It's funny because I do the same thing. I actually don't have cable. I watch the basic cable that comes free over the air, and I have Netflix. I'm not advertising for them. I don't work for them. But for me, the San Diego cable, it's about $50 to $60. So for me, I can pay my $10. I'm on the road most of the time, obviously doing education. So I save that $50 or $60 a month. So that when I saw that quote, I had to put it on there. Another quote was, instead of going out, we stay home and play games or rent movies. And, sometimes when a lot of bills come in, property taxes, et cetera, I do the same thing. I'll throw on a movie on Netflix, or, maybe I'll play a game. I like playing Monopoly. It's a fun game to play, especially with a lot of people. Another quote I thought was interesting. We never felt Social Security or the state pensions would be enough to live on, so we scrapped and saved all our married lives. We maintained the same lifestyle and saved almost every pay raise for retirement. Many companies I go out to, people don't really think like this. Anytime they get a pay raise, normally that extra money in their pocket, it goes to end up spending it on something. So when I saw that, this is usually what I try to tell individuals. Anytime you get a pay raise, you can never rely on Social Security. You always want to obviously put extra every year, whether it's a % out of your paycheck every year, whatever it might be. You can never fully rely on Social Security or even state pensions. Another quote that I thought was interesting, because I know a few individuals who recently have done this. Individuals retire and then they're back in the workforce. Most of the reasons that I've seen personally, it's to keep active. Money goes really quick when you're not saving anymore. So back in the workforce, many individuals I see go part-time. It keeps them active. So again, mental health obviously in check, but it's just extra spending money. Another quote, I've been retired for 6 years and feel quite fortunate. We paid off our mortgage and drive 10-year-old cars and canceled cable. I just recently did a debt seminar, so that was actually the last seminar I did for this. And obviously retiring debt-free. This is exactly the individual did. They retired debt-free, retired 6 years, and they feel pretty fortunate. No cable bill, so like I mentioned, it's very, very expensive. Not saying that you have to get rid of everything. But again, paying off mortgages, stuff like that, you always want to pay yourself first. Obviously, interest rates with credit cards are probably much, much higher than what you're earning in your 401k. So a lot of times you might want to pay off your debt first before you actually pay yourself. And then the final quote, although I'm of retirement age, I'm really not planning on retiring. I don't see the sense of leaving my job and benefits, only to find a few years I need to find a job with benefits. So a lot of people I'm seeing, and that's why I put this quote on here, is that they enjoy their job. They see that they have benefits, especially if your 401k provider has a great match. Obviously, you want to keep taking advantage of it. Even if they don't, at least they have a plan and investment strategy. And if they're taking care of medical and dental and everything else, that's less out of pocket. Now, I mentioned a few strategies to consider: delay taking Social Security, reduce discretionary spending, redefine your vision for retirement, having enough life insurance, etc. Let me first talk about delaying Social Security. Now, if you file for Social Security benefits as soon as you're eligible at 62, your payments are reduced by about 30% from what they would be at full retirement age, either 66 or 67, really depending on your birth year. And if you're planning on to retire at 66, wait, you'll get 30% more. Now, the second bullet, reduce discretionary spending. If you're not sure where your money's going, there are online resources that can help. Sites like mint.com. You can see where your money's going in the category from food to travel, entertainment. Once you see where the money's going, you can figure out where you can cut costs. Now, cutting expenses and living below your means is always a good idea, even if you start early, and obviously starting early is better, but gradually making cuts over time won't feel like you're missing out on anything. So plus, it'll actually probably get you prepared for a better retirement lifestyle. Now, redefine the vision of retirement. What does that mean? The reality is that you might not be out playing golf really every day or traveling around the world. You might have a scaled-back version of this, or you may end up with an entirely new type of retirement that you even never imagined. And you're really not alone. Post-recession, we're defining recession differently than previous generations of retirees. We're seeing it as a new time for priorities, new opportunities, new solutions to today's problems. So 10 years ago, most people really viewed as retirement as winding down or simple continuance of what life was. Today, the majority of retirees, over 50%, according to a Sun America study, view retirement as an opportunity for personal reinvention. So whatever that means, whether it's working later and finding different things to do, you might redefine your vision. It may not be travel around the world, which, by the way, is really expensive. I go to Germany and Poland to visit family about once a year. It's very, very expensive for a flight. In the wintertime, it could be as much as $6,000 to $1,000. In the summertime, for example, this year with the Euro Cup in Ukraine and Poland, it was about $2,000. Some flights even around $3,000. So obviously traveling, it's very, very expensive. You always want to think about that. Another last bullet, have enough life insurance. For those who are married or live with a significant other and depend on two incomes, make sure you have enough life insurance to cover expenses just in case. If you think living on a fixed income in retirement may be difficult with both income, Social Security, and retirement assets, it's going to be far more challenging should you lose your spouse or your partner. Make sure you have an estate plan put in place. Now, finally, the Retire Smart tools. If you check out retiresmart.com, there's a few buttons on there: how much you can save, are you saving enough, and am I still on strategy, still on a strategy to retire? Take a look, retiresmart.com, great website to check out. Also, if you have any questions, again, check your plan provider's website for additional retirement calculators and tools. Every time I go out to a client, I always ask, if anyone's done a calculation on what they'll need or expect for retirement. Hopefully you've done that calculation already, or if you're getting close. But honestly, it's never too late to do a calculation. Maybe you're only a few years away. Take a look online. You can type in 401k calculator into Google if you want, or like I mentioned, I have the website right here, retiresmart.com. See if you're on track. See if you have to work that extra year or two into retirement to get that retirement that you want and to live off that retirement and replacement income. Whether it's the 4% rule that I gave you earlier as a guidance, or looking at what you need every month to pay your bills, take a look. It's always good to plan. The sooner the better. And that wraps up our session. So again, there's a lot of information in the session. We're here to help. Again, any questions you might have, speak to your HR rep, contact your plan provider. We really want to help you. again, I don't make any commission off whatever you do. You decide to save for retirement or not, I really want to make sure you make the best decision possible so you can have a good retirement. And I'll swing it over. So if we have any questions, be happy to answer any of them for you.
Thank you, Dan. That was very insightful information. And with that, we'll now start addressing some of the questions that have been filtering in. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can submit them using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. As always, for any plan-specific questions, you can also reach out to your dedicated service team here at Pensionmark. I'm just going to allow for a minute or two for the questions to come in, and Dan, I'll start fielding them over to you. And I just want to take a moment to let you all know that this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to our Education Center on our new website. And with that, I will give about 10-15 seconds for the first questions. All right, Dan, we have a couple of clarification questions on some of the previous slides. The first one is about the inflation rate. The slide noted a 4% inflation rate, and we had someone ask if you could give the source for the inflation rate, as they were currently told it's around 2%.
So the inflation rate where I got that was actually Standard & Poor's website. So if you search the date that I was given there, so the current inflation rate they're saying is about 4%. I received that information from Standard & Poor's. The other rates that they gave me, and again, that's the current inflation rate, so that's not the average of the last 10 years. Typically, it averages around 3%, and that's what we always average. But what I do is take a look at on a yearly basis, and even they calculate inflation on a monthly basis as well. So, for example, the current inflation rate for this year, it says ranged as low as 1.4% to as high as just below 3%. But that's from the Standard & Poor's website. So you can take a look on that, kind of search the website. But yeah, typically they'll do it on a monthly basis. But I average it out for the current time frame, the current year. And then the other numbers I gave, the 2.2% in 1999, the 1.6 in 2002. Again, that information was right on the Standard & Poor's website. So hopefully that helps out.
Great, thank you. In regards to a retiree's asset allocation, should a retiree continue to reduce their equity exposure through retirement or remain about the same asset allocation from the start of retirement?
No, typically what I see, I'm not sure if the individual asking this question is potentially in a target date style investment, but typically there's a glide path. So as people approach retirement, you need more of your money protected. And I always say the last 10 years are the most important for keeping your retirement assets stable. So most of the time when people get to retirement and when they actually need the money, you can't afford to lose a 30-40% of your account. It's just very, very difficult to make up a loss of that magnitude. So typically what people do once they get to retirement, they cut it back to really a moderate or conservative portfolio. So I mentioned on the slide I had a balanced portfolio. It's about a 50-50 split, or a conservative portfolio is about an 80-20 split. Again, 80% being in a safer investment, bonds and cash, and 20% being in a equity stock-style investment strategy. Typically, that's the path, but it's really based on comfortability level. I've spoken with individuals who are very confident of the market, they're very aggressive, and they're in a balanced portfolio. About half in the market, half of it's safe. Other individuals are very, very more on the conservative side. They do not feel comfortable suffering any type of loss in a downturn, so they switch their strategy more to a conservative one. What I would really pose to the individual asking that question is there's many risk assessments that you can take online. Take a look at what your risk aversity is. Typically, I would say anywhere between that conservative portfolio and that balanced portfolio is going to be right for you. But like I said, it all falls down to comfortability level. For people who want more safety, less of a negative return in a really bad market and potentially even break even or maybe even be on the plus side, like I saw many individuals do actually back in 2008, is go to more of the conservative portfolio. Obviously, in a good market, though, you're not going to earn as much as you would as if you're in a balanced portfolio. So it really depends. Do you want to get a higher return over the longer point, or are you afraid to see negatives in the account? So it really depends how you feel about that. But typically what people do when they get to retirement, they're going to lower that equity exposure. Why? Because you just can't suffer the loss, especially if you need the money. Take a look at how much of this money you're actually going to need. And if it's a big portion, most likely you're going to have it a little more safer. And it's almost like an insurance. You need to keep that money stable. So take a look at what your need is in that money. If it's a big portion, most likely you're going to cut back that risk. So hopefully that helps and kind of clarifies that.
Great, thank you. Could you readdress slide 9? There was a little confusion, I think, on the equity versus bonds and versus cash. Could you just readdress the asset allocation between a retiree and a pre-retiree?
Sure. Was it, I think it was slide 9 they mentioned?
Yes.
So I know there's 2 slides with colors, so hopefully I'll get the right one, but I'll kind of go over it both. You kind of take a look at this slide here. Yeah, I should go back to the slide. Okay. So and actually, yeah, the colors do look a little funky on my screen as well. It's kind of interesting how the laptop kind of showed it up as. But the bond portion on this side here for the conservative portfolio, I was going to get my numbers in front of me really quick. Just one moment.
And Dan, it doesn't look like we can see the slides on the viewer end.
Okay, let me unpause that. Give me just one moment.
All right.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So unfortunately, I think something got altered because I'm looking at my original presentation and the one that uploaded online, and for some reason the color got shifted. But in this slide here, the conservative portfolio, 20% is equities, the 50% is bonds, and the cash equivalents, for whatever reason on the legend there, it shows as blacked out, so I'm not sure why that happened. It doesn't show on my original one, but that cash equivalent is the 30% portion. So if you look at the dark cash equivalent in the legend, it's that lighter portion, which I'm not sure why it got dark. But 50% in the conservative portfolio is bonds, 20% will be in the equities, and 30% will be in cash equivalent. With the balanced portfolio, it's about a 50-50 split. So half of it is in equities, 40% in bonds, and about 10% in the cash equivalents. So hopefully that helps. I apologize. I think it's just a formatting error when we uploaded it online.
Great. Yeah.
Okay.
And if anyone wants a copy of this slide corrected with the right colors, then just reach out to us here at Pensionmark and we can get that to you. And for our next question, Dan, could you expand on how much someone should save for their retirement? What would you say is advisable for the average retiree?
See, that's probably one of the most tricky questions ever to ask. So thank you for whoever asked that. It's really going to differ for everybody. I'm not sure what type of lifestyle you live. If you live something very, very extravagant, you might need $10 million to retire. If you live well within your means, mortgage is paid off, you may only need maybe $1 million or maybe $500,000, maybe even less than that. Really what you want to take a look at, and this is usually what I suggest to anybody I set up with a proper strategy, take a look at your income that you make every month. and how much can you live off of. So if your mortgage was paid off when you retire, how much money is that coming out each month? Let's just say you make $2,000 a month and mortgage is $1,000. So you really have $1,000 left over to pay all your bills and to keep your lifestyle. Well, technically, for retirement, you only need $1,000 then to keep your same level of lifestyle if your mortgage is paid off. So when you take a look at it, when you get to retirement, it all comes down to income replacement. Take a look at whatever you're paying now. Take a look in the future if you're going to have different expenses. Maybe maybe your mortgage is paid for, or you're going to have property taxes every year and so forth. Think about all the expenses that you pay off right now on a daily basis, and really what you need to do is maintain that same level of lifestyle. So if you're making $2,000 each month and your mortgage is either paid off or it isn't, but you want to maintain your exact level of lifestyle, well, really you need $2,000 each month into retirement for the 20 or 30 years. So that's really what it comes down to, is income replacement on a monthly basis, because that's typically when people will take out money from their retirement plan. So it's going to be different for everybody across the board. Some people might be very, very happy with living off of $200,000 for the 20 years into retirement. Some people may not be happy with $6 million in retirement. But what it comes down to is your personal situation and taking a look at having that income replacement. Typically what I say, people can live off of 60, 80, or 100% of what they make today. The reason why I say 60%, Social Security is meant to cover the other 40%. The reason why I say 80%, because we're not sure if Social Security is going to cover the full 40%. And the reason why I say 100% is because if you want to maintain exactly and you're not going to rely on Social Security at all, because we're just not sure how long it's going to last or how much it's going to pay out, that you know whatever you're going to save, your retirement is going to be exactly as you thought. And you're going to have that income replacement because you planned early. So like I said, there's no definite answer for that question. It's going to be different for everybody. But take a look at that income replacement, and that's what it comes down to, and how far you have in retirement. So if you're 65, average life expectancy for a male is 83, 18 years you'll need that money for. So then if you're making $2,000 a month, times that by 12 months, times 18 years. And that'll give you kind of an idea of what you need to have saved up for that income replacement to live 18 years into retirement. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, but that's typically what I gear people towards is that income replacement, and that's usually most helpful.
Great, thank you. Now, in the essence of time, I think we'll wrap it up with this last question. You had talked about putting an estate plan in place, and someone asked, at what age should someone think about putting an estate plan in place?
And actually, that question I wouldn't be able to thoroughly answer. It's really different for everybody. It's never too early to start planning, though, and that's really all I can say is, if you're getting to that point, closing in on retirement, I would definitely start putting it in and start thinking about it as soon as possible. You just never know what might happen, and you want to make sure you protect all your assets. So just like saving, start as early as possible to get going with that to make sure everything's covered. So I'm sorry I don't have a definite answer with that one. That's something I have to do a little more research on and see what the typical is. But for anything planning-wise, it never hurts to start early.
Great. Thank you, Dan. That will now conclude our question and answer period. If anyone does have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your dedicated service team here at Pensionmark. I want to thank you all for joining us today. And once again, Dan, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to present.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody coming out this morning and afternoon, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. This now concludes our webinar. Thank you.